Welcome to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. I'm your host, Nicole, and this podcast is your guide to start creating a lifestyle by design. From entrepreneurship, money and finance, taxes and residencies, and everything in between, this show highlights the nuances of a true global citizen lifestyle. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the podcast. In today's episode, I'm going to be going over a new and honestly unfortunate law that was passed in Canada. And I am not only going to be going over what this looks like, but also sharing my personal thoughts on why this was passed and my outlook as a global citizen and also as a former Canadian. So recently, there was a new tax the rich is quite honestly what it was, law that was passed in Canada where you will now be taxed up to 66.6. So we're going to go with 66% of your capital gains. And I'm going to dive into what this actually looks like and how this will look in practice. And hopefully, if you are listening, if you're part of this community, podcast listener, YouTube viewer, then you are probably also going to agree that this is just absolutely astronomical and completely wild. So as of right now, capital gains are taxed at 50%. So it's still going to be 50% if your capital gains is less than 250,000 Canadian dollars. So $250,000 Canadian dollars. It's going to stay at the old 50% tax rate. And a common misconception that I'm seeing online about this is that all of your capital gains is going to be taxed at 67%. That is not the reality. What is the reality is that any capital gains over 250,000 USD is then going to be taxed at this new tax rate of 66%. So essentially, going from 50% below $250,000 to 2/3 of your capital gains when it's higher than $250,000. 2/3. That's just absolutely wild to me. And if Canada is doing this, then you know other countries, Western countries, are soon going to, unfortunately, be following this trend. So it's important to know also that this does include companies and trusts. And this is quite honestly just a straight up tax on the wealthy, tax on the rich. And I mean, 250,000 is a lot of money, but let's be honest, these days, especially if you're living in Canada, it's not that much money. Before 1972, Canada actually did not have any sort of capital gains tax. Similar to Dubai, I believe, once any sort of government gets a taste for tax, they will only continue to increase those taxes. So Dubai had 0% tax on corporate and personal for a very long time. And now it is 9% on corporate taxation. It is still 0% on personal, which is still quite nice. But once there is a tax implemented, it just keeps increasing. So from 1972, where the first capital gains tax was released and rolled out in Canada. So prior to that, it was 0%. And now if you make above $250,000, again, not that much money, especially if you're living in Canada, that's not even going to buy you half a house in most places that you would probably want to live, then you're going to be taxed 2/3 of that income. So what is my recommendation? And well, first, let me just say this is why I left the Canadian system. Like I said, once there are high taxes, they will just continue to keep taxing until they know that they can't get away with it anymore. And Canada and the people there will just unfortunately continue paying whatever that amount of tax is, unless you want to live this global citizen lifestyle and you want to leave and go to a country that actually has your best interests in mind. I have no problem paying 5%, 10%, 15% of taxes, and I do. This is how I pay my taxes, and this is how I've structured it in countries that benefit me. They're benefiting me by getting out of the system of the previous system that I was in, which in my case is Canada, very high taxing country. I'm out of that system. I'm enjoying a lifestyle in other countries around the globe where I hold residency, where I can hold a tax residency if I would like. Not that I would recommend having multiple of those in most cases, depends on the situation, but I am also getting something out of it from the country. And so I'm very, very happy to pay a reasonable percent of tax. In my opinion, now is a critical time to start planning your finances for, quite honestly, the rest of your life. Doesn't matter if you're 20, 30, or 60. Start planning out what your finances are going to look for the rest of your life. And if you're going to stay in a high taxing Western country like a Canada, figure out what that's going to look like. How are you going to retire? Actually, I'm asking, how are you going to retire? I have so many clients who come to me and they say, like, I am making, a good income and I'm going to have a good pension, but there's no way with my good pension I'll be able to live in Canada, in America. And so they want other options. They're looking at Latin America. They're looking at using some of that money to purchase a residence in a Malta, let's say, a beautiful country where not harsh winters at all, like Canada, where they can relax, they can enjoy their life, they can enjoy retirement. Maybe there is some potentially interesting and beneficial laws for crypto in these places as well. There are so many other countries because it really truly is a competition between these competitive countries and jurisdictions.
Are you interested in becoming a global citizen and living a lifestyle by design in a country that aligns with you? If this is a lifestyle that you're seeking to create, we can help. Whether it be multiple residencies, citizenships, bank accounts, trust or company formations, we operate in 30 plus of the most tax-friendly jurisdictions around the globe to get you structured properly. Head to the link in the show notes to learn more and to get your global citizen journey underway today.
Of where can they bring people in? So there are countries out there that are going to be able to benefit you, whatever you're doing, if you're retired, if you're in crypto, whatever your business may be. But there are also countries where you're going to have to stay tied to them and they may very well not benefit you. Let's get into my thoughts very quickly on tax the rich. Now, I think tax the rich you'll see it in, I like to call it middle class media. What you watch on TV, it's very much so pushing a narrative of not only media, but a lot of people in Western countries are pushing a narrative of tax the rich. And in my opinion, this is the most detrimental mindset you can ever have. What a terrible, terrible mindset to have, to teach your kids to indoctrinate on those around you, your closest family and friends. What a poor as in unfortunate, but also poor as in rich versus poor. What a poor person's mindset to have as tax the rich. As an entrepreneur, I do a lot of work, as I know every other entrepreneur does. We talk about this a lot on the podcast as well, on their mindset. And in my opinion, tax the rich is such a bad mindset to be in and to have, because you're blaming somebody else for having a lot of money. You're blaming somebody else for working hard, probably working hard and struggling their whole life. And now they have what they have today and they're enjoying it. They have abundance that they've worked for. Maybe they haven't even worked that hard, but they put in the mindset work, which is also a big part of being a business owner and a big part of running a business. It's not only doing work in the business, it's doing the mindset work. And so to have a very middle-class W-2 employee mentality, in my opinion, as an entrepreneur and as a global citizen, it's just so detrimental to have the mindset and be going around saying, tax the rich, they deserve it. They've worked hard their entire lives to get to where they are today. And okay, maybe their kids, they pass it down onto their kids. I have met so many entrepreneurs who are the children of entrepreneurs and have inherited this huge company, very successful, potentially multi-conglomerate. I've met these kids. I'm friends with these people. And they, a lot of the time, feel pressure, if not more pressure, to live up to the expectations of their parents, to continue on the family name, to grow the company bigger. There's so much pressure behind that. Of course, there's always outliers and there are always anomalies, which in this case would look like, I guess the typical rich kid who is on a yacht every day. But that is an image that is pushed by media, by TV. That is not the reality in most cases. In my opinion, if you have a mindset of tax the rich, you need to take a hard look at your life and a hard look at what you are doing to get to that place that they are at. Because they have worked their whole lives. They have given up so much. A quote that I love, and I recorded this podcast with a guest about a year ago, and it still is stuck in my mind. It will forever be stuck in my mind because it resonated with me so much. So he was a multimillionaire business owner, as many of the guests on this podcast are. And we were having a specific discussion about some of his acquaintances and friends who were billionaires. And this is what he said to me. He said, "Do you think that billionaires enjoy getting divorced?" And this was so interesting to me because unless you're a billionaire or a multi-millionaire, you probably don't have this perspective. You don't think and you don't live the life that these people live. But put yourself in their shoes and think about everything they have given up, everything they have worked so hard to achieve. Do you think they like getting divorced? Do you think they like not seeing their kids or not having visitation rights? Do you think that's fun for them? And again, there's always outliers, there's always anomalies to this, but on a whole, most rich people are good. Most rich people give back. Most rich people want to make a change in this world for the better. And it's not fair to say they're rich, they work their whole lives, and they are in such a different place and mindset to you, and the middle class to just say tax the rich. I'm happy that they're paying a 66% tax now in Canada. Yes, it's over capital gains worth of $250,000. Is that much money? It's quite honestly not. So I challenge you in this episode to maybe re-listen to it again and to change your mindset. If you have these thoughts, this mindset, there's no problem with that as long as you're open to learning and open to looking and seeing that there is a whole big wide world out there of people who work freaking hard every single day or have worked hard in the past to get to where they are today. And they're millionaires, multimillionaires, billionaires, multi-billionaires. Is it okay to just blanket say tax them because they're horrible people? Absolutely not. If that's your mindset, you need to re-listen to this again, think about everything that I'm saying, and put yourself into the shoes of somebody else. So I hope this episode brought you a different perspective.
You've just listened to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. If anything from this episode resonated with you, I would appreciate if you share this podcast on your socials. And of course, be sure to tag me. And don't forget to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining me on this global citizen journey, and I'll see you in the next episode.